What's up, everybody? David Wilson here, back with another stream of the Emacs from Scratch series. Last time we went through how to set up key bindings in Emacs and how to use the evil mode to get Vim key binding emulation. And that was pretty useful. We get to learn some things about how to basically set up key bindings to do whatever you want to do, and some sort of nifty tricks on how to do that. So in this episode, I decided to take it one step further into how you can start to customize your workflow, or at least improve your workflow in Emacs, because I'm assuming that many of you who are deciding to use Emacs are probably programmers or writers or people who deal with projects of some sort. And oftentimes, whenever you have a project, you've probably got a GitHub repo or like a Mercurial repo, or I said GitHub, but I actually meant Git. Any type of repo that needs some kind of that centralizes how you store your files and how you work on your files for that project. So today we're going to talk about a couple of packages that I find really useful in my own daily workflow when working on projects. One of them is Projectile, and the other is Magit, which is a Git interface for Emacs. So let's see. Let's start off. Hi, Pepsi. Nice to see you. Let's start off by jumping back over into the configuration. Let me get that pulled up. I'll turn the volume down just slightly. Okay. So I'm going to run our little run Emacs script. Oh, I'm in the wrong folder. All right, we're back to our beautiful configuration from the last time. Okay, so Projectile. Let's take a look real quick at the homepage for Projectile, because it has a lot of good information. So the main homepage for Projectile is their manual page, and what Projectile is what they say is a project interaction library for Emacs. Basically, it gives extra intelligence to Emacs about how to interact with a particular project, usually in a particular repo that has in a particular folder that has a source control repository attached to it. So like if you open a file in Emacs and you're in a folder where you have a .git folder in it because you have a Git repo there, then Projectile kind of lights up some functionality there. Projectile also can detect that you're in some type of code project folder by looking for common project files for different platforms. Like for instance, on Node.js, you would have like package.json. For Clojure, you would have project.clj, I believe. So it has some heuristics to determine that you've opened a file in a folder that actually represents a project. Pancreas New asks if I've used general key with use package. I haven't yet, but I see that they do have some nice integration there, so it's something I want to look into in the future. So definitely, if you have some hints on that, please feel free to leave a comment after the video is complete or in the chat here, and I'll be happy to talk about it at some point. So basically, Projectile just gives you a lot of commands for managing projects. So we're just going to load it up real fast and start to investigate a little bit of stuff with it. So let's just get this little snippet of config copied over. And what we're doing is just using use package again to install Projectile. We're also going to run Projectile mode whenever the package gets loaded, basically, so that we turn on the global Projectile mode. So we have all these things available. Also, we're going to automatically bind the Control-C-P binding to the Projectile command map. And what this does is basically say, for this key prefix, I want to then have all of Projectile's commands bound under that. So now we can hit Control-C-P, and then whatever the next key is that Projectile has determined is one of its own prefix keys, I suppose, or command keys. From the documentation of Projectile, you would see that the author of Projectile, Bozidar Batsov, says that CCP is actually kind of like not something a package should decide to bind on your behalf, because Control-C is kind of like the user key mapping space, and if you put something there as a normal letter in the user key mapping space, you're kind of like stepping on the user's territory. But they've basically made it now where you actually have to go and do the key map, the prefix key map yourself, so that you figure out where you want to put it yourself, because they don't want to step on whatever key bindings you already have set up for yourself. So this is something you'll need to do if you want to get to Projectile's key maps really easily, and thankfully use package makes that easy. So another thing that's a nice thing to do is if you have a folder where you store a lot of your project folders or repositories or whatever. I have mine set to /project/code. You would want to set this projectile project search path, which will make it so that whenever you list your projects with projectile, you'll see all the things that are inside of your repository folder. That can be pretty helpful for getting the things quickly. And also there's one other thing you can set here, which is the projectile switch project action. It basically just says whenever you switch between projects, what's the first thing that happens. And in my case, I just tell it to load up DRED because it just gives me a listing of the files that are in that project. So I found that to be a little bit more convenient. So let's go ahead and evaluate this, and it will install Projectile and then load it up. So we are currently in a folder where we have a Git repository because it's our configuration folder that I've been checking into the main repo. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit that key binding that we had set up before, which is Control-CP. And now we'll get to see this command panel at the bottom that has a lot of different things that we can see here. The most sort of salient of all of these, I would think, well, there's two of them. One of them is the S, no, is it, where is switch project here? Yeah, it's P. So projectile switch project is how you can switch between projects quickly. We'll show that in a second. But we also have F, projectile find file. And this can be helpful because it actually gives you a fuzzy search capability across all the files that are inside of your project folder. So if you want to find something quickly, you can do it that way. If you've ever used Sublime Text or VS Code, you might know this is like the Control-P binding, where it just gives you ability to search across all of the files or find a file within your project. So if I hit F there, it gives me this completion in the bottom for all the files that are in this project, basically. But you see that it's actually not very nicely laid out because we don't have integration with Ivy set up yet, so we'll do that in a minute. But I'll just show you that I can go straight to run emacs.sh, which is another file inside of this repository. So it's really quick to get to files there. Also, we have Control-CPP, which is the switch project that I was telling you about. And it seems that I have a couple other projects aside from the current one that I'm in inside of my projects folder. So I can switch between those easily. And if I select the hack panel project and hit enter, then it brings me to DRED for the file listing for that project. Another interesting thing is that whenever you use Control-CP, oh no, that's actually next. So I'll go back to that. So some other interesting things about Projectile is if you hit Control-CP, you'll see that there are commands for testing your project, so that's a capital P there. There's also U for running your project. So you have very quick access to common commands you might do if you're doing a programming project. You want to run the project, like if you have a server you need to run, or if you want to run tests for your project. These commands don't do anything by default because you have to tell it how to run or test your project, but that's pretty easy. So in the case of this project, oh yeah, this hack panel project, we can actually do that. So I'm gonna hit U for run project. And it asked me for a run command. So I know that I'm using npm for this project because it's a TypeScript project, and I have a script called start set up. So I can hit npm start here, and then it asks me to save the file, fine. So now you can see I get this compilation buffer that starts up, and it starts my project. I can see the output, and there you go. I mean, it's basically running currently. I wonder if I hit Control-C, Control-C if it kills it. No, let's see, compilation, kill, end. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how to stop it at that point, but maybe if I just kill the buffer, it will do it. I run kill buffer. It has a running process. Do you want to kill it? Yes. Okay, cool. So that helped with that. All right, so similarly for tests, you can do the same thing where if you run the test command, it will ask you which command you want to run for testing. I don't have any tests in this project, so I can't show you that, but it can be helpful if you want to quickly run unit tests and see the output in a pane to the side. The nice thing is that whenever you run this command, it doesn't actually switch your focus to the other pane, so you can just keep running it while you're editing code in your buffer and keep seeing the output without having it disrupt your workflow. Pedro Mauro asks, is Projectile something using some completion framework by default? Yes, there is a built-in completion framework to Emacs. Well, there's a couple, I think, but I think this is using iDo. There is a built-in framework called iDo, Emacs iDo. I don't know exactly how people pronounce that. I pronounce it I do, but yeah, it's called interactively do things. So there's another one called icicles, and I think it used to be the default, but I think I do is now the default. I could be wrong about that. If someone knows the answer to that, please feel free to correct me in the chat. But there are ones that are built in automatically. Now those are fine. I mean, if you start typing text, like if I were to do CPP again and say YT, then it shows me YT test. So it does fuzzy matching on the set of options there. But in my opinion, this is not really the best interface for this, especially if you have many projects in a folder. Then you just have like a whole mess of text down in your mini buffer and you can't really read it. So what we'll do next is we will integrate this with Ivy. Now there's two ways to do this. Actually, I haven't tried one of them, and maybe we can try it right now just to see what happens. If I switch back over to the init.el, I believe there is a way to integrate Projectile with Ivy. So if we look for the Projectile completion system variable, I was using Control-HV there to search for these. Then it says the completion system to be used by Projectile. And we see down here in the symbol properties, there is basically a choice, and you can choose Ivy. So let's see what happens if I set that. Now, since this is a custom variable, which we can see by def custom, we have to use a different way to set this if we want it to set correctly. So I'm going to use custom here. And I will say projectile completion system. And I'm going to set that to Ivy. I think that's the right syntax for custom. Let me go double check that real quick. Custom. Yeah, that looks right. Okay. So now I'm going to reevaluate this. And let's just see if Control-C-P-P does it correctly. Okay, so it looks like we are using Ivy now, which is great. So now it's a little bit, I don't know, a better situation if you have many projects, because you'll be able to loop through this list in a more clear and understandable way. Now, what I don't know is if this gives us any extra commands. So Ivy, like we may have talked about before, has this concept of actions. And when you're in an Ivy completion buffer like this, each item can have actions associated with it. And if you hit Alt-O, it will tell you what those actions are. So in this case, we see it's default, insert, or copy, which basically tells us that there's no special integration with Ivy here. So if we want to have better integration with Ivy and Council, what we want to do is use the, I think it's Council Projectile package. So if we use package, Council Projectile, and I think we have to set Council Projectile mode, or we have to run that whenever the package gets loaded. So let's try that real fast. And I wonder if this is going to work correctly whenever I do CPP, Control-C-P-P. Okay, so we see our projects here. I'm going to hit Alt-O. Now we see a lot more commands here, a lot more actions here. So this is coming from Council Projectile. Now, one problem that I came across here whenever I was preparing this morning is there are a lot of commands in this actions list for Council Projectile Switch project. I've not been able to figure out how to scroll, because I know there are many more actions than this in this list. So if anyone in the chat knows how to make Ivy scroll the set of actions, that would be really helpful, because I can't figure it out. I'm trying to use like Alt-N and P, and it just like pops back to the previous list. I don't know, there's like something's wrong here. So what you should know is that actions make it really quick to get to certain type of things you might want to do. So for instance, let's say if we wanted to look for files in the project. So now that we've got Council Projectile installed, we can say Control-C-P-F to do Council Projectile find file. And for any file here, I can hit Alt-O, and we can see we have some other nice functionality now, like we could delete the file. We could open the file as root, like if you wanted to be able to edit a file that was owned by root. We can open externally, another window, etc. These may just be built-in stuff in Ivy. I don't really know. There may be some stuff that are projects specific, like Switch project, but it's nice to have those things at hand if you need to do some things that would normally require you to jump to like a DRED buffer or to the shell. So you don't have to do that anymore, which is nice. So let's see what else is interesting about Projectile to talk about. In the chat, let's see. Cool Satan asks, when integrating find file with Ivy, can we hide backup files? There is probably a way to do that. I think there's a way to set filters for Ivy commands, but I'm not exactly sure. We may have to look that up and get back to you. Dylan asks, how is using the custom key differ from setting that with set Q? So I don't have a very good answer for that. So let's just look at the documentation for set Q real quick. So one thing I do know is that there is set Q, but there's also set Q local and set Q default. Now, where you run set Q, I think matters, because there's a concept of buffer local variables that if you run set Q on a buffer, while you're in a buffer, basically, if you have some eLisp code that runs set Q, then it may only set that value for that buffer. And if you do set Q local, I believe it will automatically make that variable buffer local and then set the value there. So sometimes it's helpful to have like a value for a variable that would normally be global, but you set it locally so you can override it, basically. That's sort of some advanced Emacs hackery that we can talk about another time. But I think that setting custom variables may fall afoul of this whole system. Let's actually see what use package does for this. Now, this is a bit of a digression, but I think it's interesting to just go look at some eLisp code. In fact, you know what? Let's do this. Let's look at it inside of Emacs. Use package. So we'll pull up use package. I'm gonna go, let's see, let me kill my panel real quick because it's obscuring the screen. Okay. We see here that we can go to use package core. And what I wanna see is if I can find the custom keyword. So I believe that custom set is what you want to use whenever you're setting custom variables. So there is a different way to set them. So you either call custom set or set default. And if we look up custom set, then we see that it is set the current value of all edited settings in the buffer. That's not exactly what I thought it would be. Set default. Let's see. Set default. Set symbols default value to value. Yeah, so you're basically setting the default value of the variable since it's a customizable variable, and then it could be overridden by set Q or other things in other buffers. So as you might see, I'm not as familiar with how that part works, but since basically it's a good practice that if you see that a variable is defined as a custom variable, it's better to just use the custom way of setting it whenever you're using use package, just so you avoid any problems. Okay. So let's get back to Projectile. So I'm gonna hit Control-CP again and see if there's any other interesting things we can do here. So here's one interesting thing. So Emacs has this nice concept of directory local variables, and this can be very helpful for configuring both Emacs and Projectile for a specific project. So what this allows you to do is create a file inside of your repo folder that configures Emacs variables so that whenever you load a buffer inside of your project folder, it automatically applies those variables to your buffer. So if you see here, there is a capital E binding for projectile edit dir locals. And if I hit that Shift E, it pops up this new buffer called .dir locals inside of my repo. And it gives me a list of variables. So what it's basically doing is making it really easy for me to get started in customizing this file because it has kind of a bit of a weird format. I'll give you a link to documentation for that in a second. But since we know that there is the ability to customize the run command for your project, what I'm going to do is look for projectile, I think it's run. Yeah, so it's projectile project run command is the variable for that. So if I select that, then it says, what's the value? Okay, cool. I'll say npm start. I'm in the wrong project for this, but this is sort of an example. So if I hit enter on that, then it'll ask me for the next variable. I can hit Control-G to exit because I don't really have anything else to say here. So now I've saved this. Let's see if it actually loads it up automatically. So if I hit Control-CPU, it doesn't say that yet. So one thing you need to know is when you edit this dir locals file, it will not automatically reload those variables whenever you've saved the file. One thing you could do is set up a hook in your configuration to reload the variables every time that you change this file, but probably you don't want to do that, or it's really not that useful. So what you can do is just run the command directly. So this is not an interactive command, so you'll have to evaluate it with Alt:. So let me actually pull up the command window and then global command mode, command log mode. Okay. So I'm gonna hit Shift Alt. Well, it's Alt colon basically, but you are hitting Shift as a part of that. So if you see here, this eval expression is what I'm running, and I'm gonna run hack dash dir local variables. And what this does is it causes these variables to be loaded or reloaded basically. And whenever you do this loading of directory variables, you will get this pop-up often, where it basically says that there is a variable that's considered unsafe to be loaded automatically, and it wants you to confirm whether you want to load this. So it's basically trying to save your ass in case you download a malicious project that has a dir locals file that does something that, you know, makes your Emacs, you know, do something malicious. So what we can say here is either yes, no, or exclamation point. Yes says apply it to the local variables list, so this accepts it for this time only. No says don't do it, and then exclamation point says to mark the values in this file as safe for future use. And I think it only marks it as safe for this particular folder, and for other folders it may ask you again. So this can be kind of annoying, and there's probably a way in Emacs to turn it off, but probably it's safer to leave it on. So I'm gonna hit exclamation point to have it accept it. And then I'm gonna try running Control C, P, U again. And strangely, it doesn't give me npm start here, but let's try just reverting this buffer, because I've heard that also will reload them. So we'll revert the buffer, CCPU, then you see now npm start is there. So sometimes you have to mess with it a little bit before the files will be reloaded. But anytime I load another file from inside of this folder, those variables will automatically be applied, and they're applied on a per buffer basis. So it's not like they're getting loaded into Emacs as a whole. It's only being applied to the buffer that is a part of that folder. So that's one thing to keep in mind with this functionality. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else useful to talk about there? There's a project configure command. I don't know what that does. It's probably configuring for build. So it's Control CP, switch project, multi-occur, probably searching. There's another thing that's very helpful. Let's see if I have ripgrep installed. So if you've never used ripgrep before, you've probably used grep, or you've probably heard of grep. It's basically a tool you can use for searching across files in a folder. Ripgrep is an extremely fast implementation of a grepping utility written in Rust, and it's pretty useful for searching across large repositories. I'm going to go ahead and install this real fast so that we can use it. And let's see. Should be done in just a moment. Okay. Let me go back to my notes and see if it had to grab anything else. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we are going to go back into Emacs. If I can get the buffer to show up. There we are. Thank you. All right. So part of Council Projectile is the ability, well, actually, yes, it's Council Projectile, I think. So Council Projectile RG. So Council already has the ability to run searching tools like ripgrep or the Silver Searcher, otherwise known as AG, or just regular grep. That way it can give you a listing of results for running grep over a particular folder. For the projectile integration, it gives you the ability to do grep over the current project, basically, which can be helpful. So we're going to run Council Projectile RG in this folder, and it's going to be kind of an underwhelming experience because there's not many files here. But if I were to type Emacs, then we immediately get results for the occurrences of the word Emacs in this buffer, or sorry, in this project. So every file that Emacs shows up in, we see it here. We can also do something really interesting with this Ivy command, where we can run Control-C, Control-O, which pops that result list into a separate buffer that then is persistent. It doesn't go away whenever you move out of the buffer. That way you can move through this file, and for any item that you want to act on, you can just go press enter and it will jump to the location where that result happens. So if you are like me and you have to deal with very large repositories, this can be helpful whenever you are looking through a long list of results and you don't want to have to keep going and doing the search over and over again. You can just get that result list into a buffer, and then you can do whatever you want with it. I believe it's also possible to get the the commands that you would get from Alt-O. I think if you just press O on any one of these items in this list, it will give you that list of commands. So basically all the functionality that you would get from having the Ivy or council result for those search items, you can still get them in this occur buffer, which is pretty useful. And also if you want to just get rid of it, you can hit Q to make it go away. So let's see. Cool Satan says it should just be RG. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember at what point we're talking about that part, but yeah, I think RG may be the name of the command. So I think that's it. If anyone has any other like things that you have normally used Projectile for, and you want me to call it out, just let me know in the chat, because to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really use most of the stuff that Projectile has to offer, because Emacs makes it pretty convenient for me to navigate around stuff. The thing that I use like literally the most often in Projectile is Council Projectile RG for rip grab, because I'm often searching for things, and this is like the best way that I know of in Emacs to get to it really quickly. So aside from that, I don't really switch projects very much using Projectile. I would just go to I'll use normal find file and then go find it, because Ivy makes it so fast to navigate around the directories. That or Dired. I mean, Projectile is useful for a lot of stuff, but you know, some things you won't necessarily need it for. So it's just something to keep in mind. So I think at this point we might be able to move on to Magit, and I'm not exactly sure how the author of Magit pronounces Magit. He probably says it on the website. Let's see. I'm going to pull up the main Magit website, which is magit.vc. Let me open this the correct way. And basically, it calls itself a Git porcelain inside Emacs. And if you've ever heard the term porcelain before, it's basically like just a better interface over Git. I call it Magit because, well, it's supposed to be like more like magic. It's Magit. Maybe it's Magit. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think calling it Maggot sounds good, because it sounds like, you know, well, maggot. But yeah, well, however you want to call it, I'm sure it's fine, because, you know, who cares? It's so long as someone knows what you're talking about, that's the right thing. Cool. So we have a nice little manual here that you can go to. I believe if you just search the page for manual, in fact, it's probably right there. Make it user manual. So there's a lot of information here about how to use Magit, but I'm going to give you a little run through of the functionality, because personally I find Magit to be like one of the #1 or, you know, top 5 best things about Emacs. So let's go ahead and pull in the configuration for Magit, and then I'm also going to pull in Evil Magit or Maggot. Maggot. Yes, first name, last name says it's like the bug. Yeah, well, maybe it is. I don't know. It just sounds weird to me. So we're going to pull in Magit, and we're also going to pull in Evil Maggot. And let's just run these real quick and get that loaded up. I'll explain what this customization does in a second as well. All right. So one thing that we're seeing right now that we haven't seen before with the use package is this commands directive, or keyword, I guess you could call it. What this does is to say that don't actually load up Magit or Magit. Yeah, Cool Satan gave another suggestion in the chat for Mumsgit or Magit. Yeah, okay. So this basically says it makes use package set up an auto load for Magit status and Magit get current branch. So basically it won't load the package until you run one of these commands, and then it will load it up on demand. I think Magit probably already has auto load set for this. Let's see if it does. Is it auto loaded? Yeah, it's already an auto load. So probably this is just like an old thing from my configuration that isn't needed anymore, because I think that use package is pretty good about figuring that out on its own. So I am customizing one thing, which maybe I shouldn't have done in our configuration, but usually whenever Magit does a diff, it will like do it in a different window than the one you're currently in, and I didn't like that behavior, so I basically just changed it so that it would do it in the same window as the one that you're in and not in a different window. If you don't like that behavior, maybe you should just take this out. You probably should take it out by default and then see how your workflow goes with Magit before you try to configure that. But We'll see what it looks like on my side like this. I think I already installed that too. Okay. So the number one command that you need to know whenever you're running Magit is Magit status. Magit status. And it's bound by default to CXG. So what we'll see here is that we get this nice buffer where it tells us some things about where we are. So the head of our local repository, we're on the master branch, and the most recent commit was this update readme for part 3. If I was to hit enter on this line, it will give me the diff of that commit. It will give me information about, you know, the author of the commit, what the parent is, whether it's merged into a branch, and also the lines that have changed. So that's pretty useful just by itself. It also tells us that if we the branch that we're intending to merge to or push to our origin master, and then what the commit there is. So if we were to have a commit that is newer on our local branch than is what is on the remote, basically the actual branch on GitHub or whatever, then we would see a different commit here on the headline than on the merge and push line. And we'll see an example of that in a minute. We also have the list of untracked files, and the dear locals.el file that we just created is there. We can hit enter to jump to that file. So that shows us that. And we'll jump back to our Magit buffer. And also we can see the files that are tracked by the repo and see the unstaged changes. So if you move your, cursor to that line and hit tab, you'll then see the diff of the changes to that particular file. And if there were more files here, you would see all of them in a list, and you would be able to go and hit tab and see the diff on all of them at the same time, which is great. So what you can do here is you can go and highlight certain sections, or well, let's just say you can stage the entire hunk, or you can say, okay, let's go from the file level and then we'll go to the hunk level. So you can stage the entire file by putting your cursor on the file name and press S. And now you can see that this section says stage changes. If we had multiple files that were in the unstaged list, you would see that only one of them got moved to stage changes at that point. In fact, let's go ahead and add dear locals too. So you can stage with S, you can stage all files with capital S, and you can also unstage files with U. So if I was to unstage init.el with U, it would go back to the unstaged list. You can also unstage all files with capital U. So now the init.el goes back to unstaged, and dear local goes back to untracked because it was never checked in before. So that's pretty useful. Then on the unstaged changes, we can open that up, and then we can select any text here and press S to stage only that section. So now we see that there's init.el is in both the unstaged and staged sections. So we can go look at init.el here in staged and see that the staged part that we added is there. And in the unstaged part, the rest of the file contents are there. So we can go back and even unstage this section as well. So it's very, very quick to go and stage changes. My usual workflow is that whenever I'm making a change and I'm ready to commit it, I would just go through all the files that I made changes to, and I'm basically just reviewing my own code at that point. I just go look at the change. I'm like, okay, that part's good. I'll stage it. And whenever you have different chunks of the file that are changed, like let's say in this file we changed something toward the beginning. In fact, let's go try that now. I'll just delete this line, and we'll go back to Control XG to go back to the buffer. Now we see there's a hunk here. You can even collapse individual hunks by going to the header of it and hitting tab. So we can see the individual hunks, we can stage individual hunks, and we can unstage individual hunks as well. What else? So that's all well and good. So like, let's say you want to stash some changes, like, oh, I was talking about commits. So yes, my workflow is that I will go through all the changes in my files, I will stage the parts that I want, and then if I'm ready to make a commit, I can do that. So before I make a commit, let's actually look at branches, because I'm going to make a commit into a branch so we can see some things. So one thing I missed saying before was whenever you open the Magit status pane, if you hit question mark on the keyboard, you get this panel that shows up at the bottom. It basically tells you all the things that Magit's capable of. We can see that there's things for branching, there's commands for committing, for cloning, for diffing, pushing and pulling, rebasing, just plain fetching, cherry picking, stashing. I mean, pretty much everything that you would want to do with Git is very easily at hand. And you do not have to hit question mark before you hit any of these letters. You can just open the status buffer and hit any letter. So in my case, I want to switch branches. or actually create a new branch. So in the buffer here, I'm gonna hit B, and then that gives us a sub panel that tells us the additional commands we can use after that. So we're now in the branch panel, and you can check out another branch by hitting B, but right now I'm not gonna do that. I'm actually gonna create a new branch. There's two ways to do that. And if you know much about Git, what you know is if you do git checkout, no, I think there's git branch that will create a new branch, but it doesn't switch to it automatically. And then git checkout -B will create a branch and switch to it. So there's the sort of difference between the C and the S here. C will just create a new branch, but won't switch to it. And S creates a spinoff. The nice thing about spinoff is it gives a little extra behavior than what you would get from normal git. And then actually I can show you an example of that right here. So I will make a commit to this file. Let's just, let's commit this deletion of this line. So I've staged just that deletion. I'm gonna hit C for commit. We see the commit panel pop up. I can press C to commit. I can do some other things here like amend or reword, etc. But we'll just do commit for now. So delete a line. I'm typing in my commit message. We see that the top buffer here is the buffer that we would use to edit your commit message, and the bottom buffer actually shows us the diff of the files that we've changed, which is pretty helpful because if you're trying to write a commit message, you might need to remember what changes you made, so you can just jump down to that window and scroll around and see what changes you had made in the buffer. So I can hit Control C. If I don't want to make this commit, like I decided, oh, you know, let's not do that right now, I can hit Control C, Control K, and that will quit out of the... I realize I'm not getting commands showing up in this buffer here. Let's see, global command, log mode, cool. Control C, Control K, that will cancel the commit, but let's just go ahead and do it. So I'll hit CC again, and then I can say delete a line, and hit Control C, Control C, which confirms the commit basically. So now we can see that on head above, it says delete a line is our latest commit, but then our merge and push branches are still what's already on the remote. So sometimes what you'll be doing whenever you're working in a repo is you'll make a commit and you'll accidentally commit it to master, and you're like, oh crap, I meant to do that in a branch. So that's what this spinoff is actually good for. If I hit B for branch and then hit S, then I can say delete line. I'll basically create a branch called delete line. Now we're in the delete line branch, and if I were to switch back to master, hit BB, which, okay, let me do that more slowly. Hit B, and we see I'm gonna hit B again for the branch revision. I'll check out master, which changes. Okay, so I guess we're gonna talk about stashing now because I can't change the branch without stashing. So if you ever hit a case where you need to, yes, okay. Control X G, please, let's go. There we are. You ever hit a situation where you need to switch branches, but then it tells you can't because there's changes to files? You can stash your changes. You can hit Z to pull up the stash list. And usually I'm just pushing Z for stashing both the index and the work tree because you basically want to stage all the files that are known by Git. So I hit Z again to stash that. It asks you for a stash message. You can put in an empty line basically. And if you look in the stash list now, you can see that on the delete line branch, I've stashed some changes, and you can hit enter, I think, to look at that stash. So you can see what I've stashed here, basically. So that's pretty helpful, because normally you would have to type, I think, git stash show at the command line to get that information. So now that I've stashed that, I can use BB to switch to master. And you can see now in master, it's back at the original commit that we had at the head of master. So when we did that BS to create a spinoff branch, it actually took the commits that are newer on that branch than what's on origin and moved it over to this new branch we created. So that's a nice little workflow improvement because oftentimes you would have to, once you realize you committed to master, you would have to create your new branch and then go back to master and then reset the head back to the previous commit. And it's just sort of like a headache. So it's good that you don't have to do that anymore. So I'm going to use BB again, and I'm going to select delete line branch. And now let's check out what it's like to push. So I'm going to use, I think it's capital P for push. And now we get this set of options, which is going to be pretty helpful because if you work in Git repositories that are going to GitHub or GitLab or whatever, you're going to have to be pushing all the time. And pushing is something that needs to be fast. So when you hit capital P, you get options for pushing to the remote. And the first time you do that, it's going to set what the remote is. You can also have a separate push to the upstream using the U key. So let's say if you are on GitHub and you forked a repository so that you can make commits to it before you send a pull request, normally you're going to use P for your fork of the repo and then U for the upstream of the repo. Like, for instance, if you are also the owner of the upstream repo, but you just have like a fork to do some work kind of in a clean way without pushing it to the main repo, you could also push to the main repo too if you needed to. Then you have the E command for elsewhere, which basically allows you to push arbitrarily in case like there's some other remote that you have set up that you want to push to. So all three of those can be useful for different purposes. You can also push like other branches or other ref specs or whatever. I very rarely use all these. You might want to push tags sometimes, but often the thing that I'm using most is capital PP for push remote. Also, if you do things like rebasing, you're going to want to know about the -F and -F because that allows you to force push. So often after I rebase my commits, I will quickly hit the command binding for Magit status and then hit capital P-FP, and that will force push the branch to the origin basically, or the remote basically, whatever the remote is for that branch. And that makes your workflow really fast, because normally you would have to go to the command line and type in like git push origin my feature branch -F, and like doing that over and over again can be I don't know, like it's a little bit of a waste of time and taxing on the hands. So you can do it really fast with these key bindings. So let's go ahead and push remote, and I'm going to just set it to origin. So I'm pushing to my own repo, and in a moment it will be finished. The best way to use Magit to push to remote repo, let's see if it actually works, because maybe I'm not logged in at the moment. It may not work for me at the moment. So this goes into what I was going to say. So authentication with Git. If you are on a Unix-based system like Linux or Mac OS, you probably are going to use SSH to authenticate with your remote Git repository. And if you do that, then you need to make sure that you have your editor configured correctly for being able to type in your passphrase, if you have a passphrase set up, which you should, for your SSH key. Usually Magit will pop that up for you because Git will be prompting for it. So I think that by default, it will just ask you for your passphrase. In this case, oh, you know what? I bet it's asking me in a different location. Yes. All right, let me do this one more time. I think it's probably asking me for my passphrase somewhere else, because I have Emacs set up to prompt for passphrases. I'm going to try this in my own repository, or my own configuration real quick, because I think that there's probably an issue with the editor not being able to pull that. Come on now. All right, so I'm gonna try to push this here. Oh, come on, go away. I'm getting nagged now by this whole dear locals thing. I'm just gonna get rid of that because it's annoying me now. All right, so, oh, and to delete that file, whenever I was on it, the dear locals file, I just deleted it right now, you hit X. X will trash a file that is not actually checked into the repository. Let's see, is that listed here? X is discard. So you can discard changes to a file. Here we go, finally. If I typed it in right. Type in your password on a stream. Sometimes it doesn't go so well. Okay. Now, I wasn't able to push it because, oh, it must have already completed. So let me just force push that just to make sure. Okay, cool. Let's go back to our Emacs then. So we've pushed delete line to origin. As you can see here, push says that delete line is at origin. So now we know that it's in our remote repo. In fact, we can even pull that up. If we go to github.com/davidwill/runemax, and then we can look at the branch list and see that the branch has been pushed. Even GitHub will tell us delete line has been pushed. Okay, cool. So now that we've gotten through the basic stuff that you would want to do, let's talk about things like Rebase, because Rebase is a thing that probably you will do often whenever you're working with repositories where you're making commits that other people are going to review, because you want to make sure your commit history makes sense and squash or remove things that you don't want there anymore, et cetera, et cetera. So let's actually go and make some other changes to this file, just, because we're going to get rid of them anyway. I'm just going to delete some stuff. Let's see, message. This is annoying. Yeah, all right. So let me, I'm hitting my own key bindings for Magit status. So let me pull that back up. All right, cool. So I'm going to make another commit. And I'm going to say create a mess. Okay. So now we have another unpushed commit. You can see, one nice thing is it will tell you the commits that you have not yet pushed to your branch, so you can kind of keep track of that. It's also good for knowing what you're about to push whenever you're ready to push a branch for code review or something. So what I'm gonna do is, like, imagine you're in a scenario where you forgot to make a change to a previous commit. Hey, Alex. You forgot to make a change to a previous commit and you want to keep things organized. You want to like actually include it with that commit. So let's say we wanted to delete another line here and we wanted to include that in the previous commit. So let's see, we can look at our recent commits list and we see that this is another useful thing about Magit. And every time I press a button, I end up getting in trouble. So we see that the first commit is create a mess. It's in our local delete line. You can tell that it's local because it doesn't have a remote name in front of it, like origin/. The next commit is origin/delete line. So we can tell that that commit is what's been pushed to origin/delete line. And the next commit says origin/master. So we know that commit's on master. So we can basically see like the history of our commits, what different branches they're all attached to. So what we want to do is take the changes we just made and add them to this previous commit that we've already pushed. So what I'm going to do is stage this change, and I'm going to press C, and now I'm going to use this instant fixup command. And what this does is gives you a list of the recent commits, and it tells you at the top, type CC on a commit to fix up into it, or CCCK to abort. So since I want it to go into this delete align commit, I'm going to hit CC when I'm on that line. And now we can see that that change has been added to that commit. So instead of using git rebase and then moving the commit around and using fixup to smash it all together, now I have this really quick way to do it in the UI without having to go to the command line and do a bunch of git rebase surgery. This is pretty commonly used in my workflow. I think it's pretty useful, and I think you're gonna like it too. Another thing we can do is easily do actual rebases. Like for instance, if we wanted to squash this create a mess commit into delete a line, we could press R for rebase. And at the bottom, we see the commands for rebase are interactively, a subset, blah, blah, blah. Most of the time, I'm just using I for interactive rebase. So I press I, and it says CC on a commit to rebase it and all commits above it. So you basically, wherever you want to start your rebase, you need to go put your cursor on that line. So I'm going to put it on this delete a line commit. I'm going to hit CC, and now it's going to give me the typical rebase buffer that you see when you do interactive rebase on the command line, with the same words that you would normally use on the lines to indicate what action to take. So you can put your cursor on any particular line, and instead of editing the text and telling it what you want it to be, you can just press the letter for the thing. So in this case, I want to do a squash on this line. So I'm going to press S, and then it marks it as squash. And I'll then press Control C to complete it. And then we can see that, okay, it's asking me to edit the commit message. So when you do a squash, normally it wants you to like fix up the commits. So I'm gonna hit CC here because we're basically just putting the two commits together. And now the rebase is finished, and we only have the delete a line commit, and it has all the changes that we have been making so far. And now if I hit capital P to push it, we're going to see that it's going to fail to push the refs because we don't have the same history anymore. So you need to do a force push. So I'm going to do capital P -F. And when I hit -F, you'll see this force with least lights up. Then I'll hit P again, and that will force push that branch to the remote. And this time it will complete. So that's basically the typical workflow you might use whenever you're doing commits, like switching branches, staging hunks, making commits, making fix-ups to add things to previous commits, doing rebasing, pushing, force pushing, etc. If there's any other things people might want to know, let me know in the chat. But there's other things you can do, like cherry picking commits from another branch. Typically, I forget the right way to do that because the UI for that is not exactly the same flow I would expect. Like, if you go into the status buffer and hit question mark, there's this item called cherries, and if you press Y, it asks you for the cherry head. I don't know if that's the target. Okay, so that's the source, I guess, and then the upstream is the one you want to put it to. I don't know. Better to look at the documentation for that. I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer. But the easier way typically that I've found to do that work is to use apply, I think. If I hit capital A for apply, then if I can apply here by picking, if I hit capital A, then it gives me cherry pick, and I can say which branch I want to cherry pick from. And then it does something else. I think that basically you can select which commits to cherry pick at that point, but I'm not exactly sure. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to hit A again, and then A to abort. Another thing that's good to know, any of these commands that have like a workflow involved, like Rebase, if you have a merge conflict during a Rebase, some specific commit, then you may need to make some changes and then continue it. In Rebase at least, and as you just saw in apply, if you hit R again to go back to the Rebase menu, it actually gives you a different menu if you're in the middle of the operation, and then you can hit R again to continue or A to abort. So that's one thing to know in case you hit any issues while you're doing rebases, etc. So let's see, was there anything else I intended to cover with all of this? So there's one more package that we can talk about, which is called Forge, which is actually an offshoot of the Magit package. And let me just... let's see, what did I do? I probably need to pop my stash. If I go back, I keep hitting the wrong command binding for this. So I'm gonna go back to master, because I don't need all the stuff that we had just done. And to pop the stash that we had made earlier, I'm gonna press Z, and then we see that there is a P for pop. There's also A for apply if you don't want to delete the stash, but I don't really need to keep it. So I'm gonna hit P to pop. I'm gonna pop the most recent, I believe, that's the one. Yeah, okay, so we're back to where we had all of our projectile and magit and everything. So we're gonna go back to the file now. So I'm gonna quickly just use package forge and install that. So Forge lets you pull down all the information from a particular repository, like issues, pull requests, and you can actually manipulate those inside of Emacs. So you can respond to comments from GitHub issues in Emacs. You can look at your GitHub notifications. The one thing to know is that whenever you install Forge for the first time, it's going to compile this Emacs SQLite binary. So that takes, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds. But the thing you should know about Forge is that you will need to authenticate with GitHub to use it successfully. And the way to do that is in the here we go. It's in the documentation for Forge itself. Let me see if I can pull that file up. I think Firefox and OBS together are trashing my machine. It's running really slowly. Okay, so there is the manual, and then there's also some link I left here for getting started. Let me pull this one up first. What are we looking at here? CO. And yes, so we have the Forge developer manual. The place you want to go to is under getting started for token creation, because you'll need to get your GitHub token. Forge used to help you do this automatically with a wizard, but then they stopped doing it because it's just too complicated to try to make this work and stay up to date with the scopes that GitHub requires for accessing certain things with their API. So basically it tells you need to go to the GHub getting started documentation. GHub is a library written by the same author which does the GitHub API calls. So it will tell you about how to set up authentication for that, how to create the token, and where to put it. Basically, the high-level information about that is once you've created your token on GitHub, you can go put it into a file called .authinfo in your home directory, and then Emacs will look into that file to know what the password is to authenticate against the API. To save time, I went ahead and set that up myself ahead so that we wouldn't have to watch me struggle with setting up a token. So let's see if Forge works for me. I am going to run Forge pull, which is the first thing you need to do every time, so that it will pull things from the remote repo. And then I believe that Forge will integrate with the Magit status buffer. So if I was to hit Control XG, it might have information here. Yes. Okay, so now we have an issues list. So for the repository that you're in, it will actually give you the list of issues. And I can see that there's already one issue here because someone helped me out with pointing out a detail about something in a previous stream. And now you see like all the comments from that issue are here. The state of it is here. The labels are here, everything. And I believe that you can even like forge label, edit topic labels, Control C, Control E. I can say, let's see, question. So I can add the label question to that, and now it shows up here. So that's kind of useful. I mean, if you want to stay in Emacs more and not have to jump to a browser window, then that's a possibility. I think we can also create pull requests here. So let me actually try that with that branch that I started. So forge pull, create pull request. I'm gonna say the source branch is delete line, target branch is master, and I think we have a buffer to sort of give description of the pull request. So this is a demo pull request using Forge. So let's see if I can hit Control C, Control C. I believe it will be creating a pull request for that, and now we can actually see there's a pull request here in this list. For number 2, delete a line. I can pull up the information here, and we can go to the repo itself and see if that worked. This is actually the first time I've ever done this with Forge, so I'm pretty impressed that it worked the first time. So pull requests, delete a line is here. So yeah, I created a pull request directly from within Emacs without having to go to the browser at all. I probably will start doing this in the future because that was actually pretty helpful. Let's see, what else is in Forge? I have a couple more minutes. So you can look at notifications. One thing that I have found is that if you have a lot of notifications on GitHub, it will take forever to pull them all down. So I don't really use it. I would like to use it because I have a lot of GitHub notifications and I would like to stay on top of them in Emacs, but it hasn't worked out so well for me so far. If I pull up Git status, let's see what it does. If I hit question mark, I think there's a notifications. Maybe it's not here. So let's look at the manual real quick and see what it says. Forge user and developer manual, notifications. Forge, oh, okay, so it is single quote, apparently. So if I were to go back here and hit single quote, now I can see, what is this? List all modules? That's not right. Maybe it's a different command. Well, let's just go forge list notifications. And probably it's empty because I have not synced them yet. Forge pull notifications. Yeah, let's see how long this takes. It may take forever. We won't wait around for it if it doesn't actually finish very soon. Any other like questions about Magit or Projectile or anything? I think we're nearing the end of the stream here. We'll just see if this actually works. Yeah, I don't think it's going to finish anytime soon. Let me just see if there's anything else we can look at. Forge. I think you can create forks, which is nice. If you've cloned a repository from somewhere because you're investigating an issue, like you want to make a contribution to a repo, you could probably create a fork to your own personal account using that, which is a nice thing to do, I think. Listing topics, yeah, you basically list all your issues. So I think it's list issues and pull requests. So a topic on GitHub, it can be both of those things. Forge, what else? Post, let's see, can I create an issue? Create issue. Okay, so if you want to create an issue, I think that's actually pretty easy too. This is a test issue from Forge. And then let's see if we can do a GitHub emoji. Control C, Control C. And then let's go check the repo and see if that showed up. This is so slow. Okay. There we are. Let's check our issues list. Cool, it looks like that worked. And okay, one of the emojis probably would work, but the browser I'm using is not dealing with emojis correctly, and I think this other one probably is not a real emoji name. But anyway, I mean, I think that demonstrates the power you have to deal with Git repositories and GitHub repositories and projects in general inside of Emacs. So hopefully that was instructive for you today. Once again, just a reminder that all the code that we've been working on for our configuration is in this github.com/davidwill/runemax repository. I'm going to leave a link to that in the comments whenever the video is finished processing. And yeah, if you have any questions about anything that we did here today, if you're watching the recording, please feel free to leave a comment. You could also leave a comment on the Reddit post. You can leave an issue in this repo. Pretty much anywhere you want to, leave a comment is great. And also, if you like what you saw here today and you want to see more videos sort of going through how to configure Emacs and how to use Emacs, please hit the subscribe button and then click the bell to make sure that you get notified for all the streams as they come. I think I'm going with like a every Friday type thing, and I'm sort of settling into that routine now. I know I've said different times before, but Fridays seem to be working out pretty well. People seem to want to come on Friday because maybe it's Friday and it's a nice day. So I think that's it for today. So thanks again for joining us and being here, and also all the nice comments and everything, and helping me learn how to pronounce Magit correctly. I hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.